What would you do if the whole city suddenly saw your most painful secret streamed on giant screens for strangers to judge? A homeless veteran cradling his old dog. A boy called a criminal before he ever broke a law. A mother begging just to keep a roof over her child. The system thought it owned their stories, but in one shocking night, the mirror cracked and the city could no longer look away. This is the story of how ordinary people fought back against a machine that tried to erase them. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see power, prejudice, and humanity itself. And if you want more untold stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and join us. The city woke up gray and restless, as if it had crawled out of a dream that refused to let go. The sun hadn't yet warmed the streets, but the glass towers already gleamed, catching what little light broke through the clouds. On the avenues, polished cars glided by in silence, and the cafes on the corners spilled the scent of roasted beans and faint jazz. But turn a block, just one, and everything changed. Shadows thickened in alleys damp with mildew. The air reeked of trash and rust. An old man sat slumped against a wall of cardboard, wrapped in a blanket shredded thin as a snake's skin. His name was James, once a decorated soldier. Now he was just another forgotten man on a cold street. At his side lay Rex, a shepherd long past his prime, ears bent, eyes clouded, but still lifting his head each time his master shook in the grip of another nightmare. No one stopped. People passed with their collars up and their eyes elsewhere. A few stared long enough to flinch, as if poverty were contagious. One man, smug with his leather shoes and gold watch, tossed a coin at James's feet. It clinked on the pavement, not charity, just performance. James bent to pick it up with trembling fingers. Rex licked his hand gently, eyes saying what words couldn't. We still have each other. Across town, a boy sat on the school steps clutching a battered backpack to his chest. Malik was 12, with wide black eyes that had already learned the weight of silence. That morning he'd been turned away again from the basketball team. We're full, the coach had said, but Malik knew better. His teammates' laughter was sharper than the wind, names they'd learned from adults who spoke them behind closed doors. He held the ball his mother had bought at a thrift shop, its leather faded, seams frayed, as if his hopes were stitched inside it. The teacher walked past without slowing. He frowned at Malik's wrinkled shirt, then looked away when the other boys jeered. Better to ignore it than confront what was obvious. In another corner of the city, a young mother clutched a wrinkled resume in line outside a factory, long since gutted by time. Her dress was worn thin, her shoes cracked at the heels. Every step she took was weighted with hunger she refused to let her daughter feel. The interview lasted barely a minute. No diploma? No references? We need someone more reliable, the recruiter said, not even glancing up. She left with her eyes lowered, the paper crumpled in her fist. On the curb, her 6-year-old waited, clutching a ragged cloth doll. She smiled at her mother as if a smile could erase hunger. The city lived with two faces. Light and shadow, marble and mildew, wealth and want. The only thread between them was contempt. The wealthy looked down on the poor as if they were stains. White eyes narrowed at dark faces. Power sneered at silence. Every glance, every smirk was another brick in a wall thicker than concrete. At 8 sharp, Detective Anna Torres stepped out of her aging patrol car and into the precinct's glass doors. She wasn't the kind who blended in. Black boots striking the floor, hair tied back in a no-nonsense knot, eyes sharp but not unkind. She had grown up in a barrio where neighbors survived more on grit than money, where her parents swallowed humiliation for being Latino. She had joined the force not for a paycheck but for a stubborn belief that justice, if it existed, had to be wrestled from places like this. She hadn't yet learned how thin the mask of justice could be. The interrogation room on the 3rd floor smelled of bleach and sweat. Harsh white light flattened every face beneath it. A two-way mirror stretched across one wall, watching without ever returning the gaze. That morning, she'd been assigned a petty case, a convenience store theft. The suspect, a middle-aged black man, sat trembling, hands clenched in his lap. Anna prepared to begin, but something flickered above her, the security camera. By protocol, footage was archived, never streamed. Yet her gut tugged. She checked her laptop, tapped into the feed. What she saw stopped her cold. The interrogation wasn't contained. It was being broadcast live to a hidden platform. On the screen, comments rolled in. Look at his face. Guilty already. $10 says he cracks in 10 minutes. Of course it's a black guy, figures. Her stomach knotted. This wasn't surveillance. It was spectacle. Someone had turned human misery into entertainment, prejudice into currency. Anna snapped the laptop shut. But the questions raced. Faster than her pulse. Who had hijacked the system? Who stood to profit? And worse, was everyone complicit by their silence? Outside the glass, the city kept moving, oblivious. But for Anna, the room had grown heavy, thick with something unseen. She knew, in that instant, that she had touched the edge of something vast and rotten, something deeper than any case she had ever worked. And yet, even as dread filled her lungs, a faint spark glimmered, an irrational hope that somehow, against all odds, the truth could still break through. The first time Anna saw James outside of the precinct, she almost walked past him. He was just another shadow on the edge of the sidewalk, sitting against the gray stone with his back bent, Rex curled up beside him. But there was something in the way the dog lifted his head, the way his eyes followed her, that made her slow down. The leash was nothing more than a frayed piece of rope, but the animal's loyalty was unshaken, carved into his very bones. James muttered to himself, his hands twitching as if they were still holding a rifle, or still bracing for the sound of gunfire. Later that evening, Anna sat at her desk replaying the hacked interrogation feed, but her mind wandered back to James. His presence outside the building felt like a symbol discarded, overlooked, yet somehow unyielding. She wondered if he even knew that somewhere, hidden behind mirrored glass, the city had found another way to strip men like him bare, turning their lives, their traumas, into cheap entertainment for anonymous viewers. James lived in a world of fragments. Pieces of memory returned to him, uninvited sandstorms and distant explosions, the cries of brothers in arms swallowed by the desert. Rex had been there too, once, young and fierce, his nose catching scents of buried danger, his bark saving lives James could no longer name. Now both of them were worn down, their service medals long forgotten in a pawn shop drawer. When James shook awake in the middle of the night, sweating and gasping, Rex pressed close, steady as stone. The city ignored them, but together, they formed a kind of fragile fortress. Malik's fortress was much smaller, the corner of a stairwell in his school where the teachers rarely looked. He would sit there with his notebook, sketching figures of players dunking a basketball, sketching superheroes that looked like him, brown skin, wide smile, shoulders that carried the weight of worlds. The real court was closed to him. Not enough space on the team, they had said, but Malik understood. The ball he practiced with was soft from years of use, the grip long gone, but his hands clung to it anyway. Each bounce was an act of defiance. His mother worked double shifts. At a diner, pouring coffee for men who never tipped and wiping counters sticky with spilled syrup. When she came home past midnight, Malik pretended to be asleep, though sometimes he left his sketches on the table where she could see them. She would pause, touch the drawings with tired fingers, and whisper, "You're going to be bigger than all this, baby." But the world outside the door was louder, crueler, and Malik carried that cruelty in his chest like a second heartbeat. The young mother in the South, and her name was Rosa, had learned to count coins like prayers. Each cent was measured, divided, rent, bread, bus fare, milk. Her daughter Marisol was 6, her hair tied up with scraps of ribbon, her laughter ringing brighter than the rusting factory gates they lived beside. Rosa had once dreamed of becoming a nurse, but the dream had slipped away after Marisol's father disappeared, leaving only a trail of unpaid bills. Every job interview was another wound. Employers who looked through her as if she were invisible, as if poverty had stained her skin. She would walk home holding Marisol's hand, smiling for her child while her stomach ached from skipping meals. Anna carried their faces with her like photographs pressed against her ribs. The hacked feed had shown her that someone was collecting these stories, not with compassion but with greed. Interrogations leaked, lives stripped of dignity, all for the amusement and profit of people hidden in the dark. The network thrived on weakness, on the desperation of James, the silence of Malik, the hunger of Rosa. They were easy prey because the city had already marked them as expendable. One night, Anna stayed late in the precinct, tracing the digital footprints of the hacked cameras. The glow of her monitor lit the room in blue, shadows stretching long across the floor. Outside, the city buzzed with the hum of neon signs and late-night traffic. She thought of James curled beneath a bridge, Rex's body pressed close against the cold. She thought of Malik sketching superheroes in the stairwell. She thought of Rosa counting coins by candlelight while Marisol slept. Each image tightened her chest until she could hardly breathe. Anna had joined the force believing in justice, but what she saw now was something more primal, survival. These people weren't waiting for justice. They were waiting to be seen, to be acknowledged as human. The hacked feed didn't just violate privacy. It stole their very humanity, feeding it into a machine that turned pain into spectacle. The next morning, she left early to walk past the shelter where James sometimes stayed. She found him sitting outside with Rex, who lifted his head and wagged his tail as if recognizing her. James squinted against the light, his eyes bloodshot. "You with the cops?" he asked, his voice gravelly. Anna hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I am." James chuckled without humor. "Figures. Thought you'd walk past like the rest." "I almost did," Anna admitted. "But your dog wouldn't let me." James reached down, scratching Rex behind the ears. "He's got better judgment than most people. Saved my life more times than I can count. And now look at us." Anna sat beside him on the curb, the smell of gasoline mixing with the faint scent of wet fur. "You still remember their names?" she asked softly, though she didn't specify who. James's hand stilled on Rex's back. His eyes glazed over, staring somewhere far beyond the street. "Every single one," he whispered. "Even the ones the world's already forgotten." Anna swallowed hard. She wanted to tell him that someone was using his pain, broadcasting lives like his to faceless spectators. But the words lodged in her throat. She wasn't ready, not yet. Elsewhere, Malik was fighting another battle, one that seemed smaller but cut just as deep. He had turned in an essay about heroes and written about his mother, her tired feet and her steady smile. When the papers were returned, his teacher had scrawled in red ink, "Next time, write about someone real." Malik folded the paper slowly, as if trying not to break it, then tucked it into his notebook alongside his sketches. He didn't cry, not there, not where they could see him. But when he walked home, he kicked every stone on the sidewalk until his toes ached. Rosa, meanwhile, had reached the edge of her patience. The landlord had given her a warning about the rent, and the grocery bill had grown heavier each week. She went to the social services office, clutching Marisol's hand, only to be told she didn't qualify. "There are others in greater need," the clerk said, not meeting her eyes. Rosa laughed bitterly, wondering what greater need looked like. If not her empty fridge, if not her daughter's thin wrists. Anna's investigation deepened. The hacked system wasn't a single glitch. It was a web, sprawling and deliberate. Streams of interrogations, of arrests, even of domestic disputes, sold on hidden forums. The viewers weren't just gawkers, they were investors, betting on outcomes, trading human misery like currency. And the ones most often exploited were always the same: the poor, the homeless, the brown, the black, the ones who could least afford to be exposed. She traced one server to an abandoned warehouse district. Inside, she found cables snaking across the floor, humming with stolen electricity. On the screens, she saw Malik's school listed under surveillance feeds, Rosa's apartment building, the shelter where James sometimes slept. They weren't just targeting suspects. They were targeting the vulnerable, turning entire lives into fodder for a grotesque marketplace. Her stomach turned. She thought of Malik's essay, dismissed as fantasy. She thought of Rosa's laugh, brittle with despair. She thought of James whispering names into the void. It wasn't enough to investigate quietly. These people needed protection, needed someone to stand between them and the machine that fed on their existence. But Anna also knew the danger. Whoever ran this network was in small time. They had money, connections, power. Going after them meant putting herself in their crosshairs. That night, she returned to her apartment, the city lights flickering through the blinds. She poured a glass of water but didn't drink it, her hands trembling. She thought of the faces again: James, Malik, Rosa, and for the first time in years she prayed. Not for justice, not for strength, but simply for the courage to keep seeing them, to resist the temptation to look away like everyone else. The rain came down hard the next day, washing the gutters until they overflowed with trash and cigarette butts. James sat beneath the awning of an abandoned store, Rex pressed close against him. The water had soaked through his jacket, the lining clinging cold to his skin. He stared at the street as people hurried past with umbrellas, shoes splashing through puddles. No one slowed. No one ever did. He coughed into his fist and felt the rattle in his chest. It scared him, but he hid it. He had survived worse, he told himself. The war had taught him that bodies could be pushed past breaking. Yet deep down he knew this was different. The war had given him purpose. The streets gave him nothing. A boy darted across the intersection, soaked to the bone, clutching a backpack to his chest. Malik, trying to outrun the rain, his sneakers slapping against the pavement. He stopped when he saw James and Rex. For a moment he hesitated, then crouched down to pat the dog's wet head. Rex's tail thumped weakly, and Malik smiled. "Cool dog," Malik said. James nodded, lips cracking into a faint smile. "Saved more lives than most men I knew." Malik stayed for a moment, as if he wanted to say more, but then the crosswalk light changed and he ran off, leaving James watching his small frame disappear into the downpour. The world kept throwing them together in fragments, like broken glass pieces that didn't quite fit, yet still reflected the same light. At the diner that night, Rosa wiped tables with her last ounce of strength. The rain had driven in a crowd, and her feet ached from hours of carrying plates and coffee refills. Marisol sat in the back booth with crayons, coloring on scraps of paper menus. Rosa glanced at her often, the sight of her daughter's head bent over her drawings the only thing keeping her moving. But when the manager barked about the streak she'd missed on a glass, something in her chest cracked. She bit her tongue, swallowed her anger, and kept scrubbing. Marisol looked up and caught her mother's eye. She smiled, holding up the drawing of a house with bright windows, a dog in the yard, a mother and daughter standing together. Rosa blinked back tears. She didn't want her daughter's dream to be just another picture, tucked into a drawer. Anna moved through the city like a ghost, her badge tucked away, her mind racing with connections. She began to notice cameras everywhere, the ones on street corners, above shop doors, on buses. She wondered how many of them were compromised, how many lives were being streamed without consent. She could almost feel eyes watching her too, tracking her movements. She returned to the warehouse district with a flashlight and a hand on her sidearm. The building groaned under the weight of years, its windows shattered, glass crunching under her boots. Inside, the hum of machines echoed. She followed the cables to a room lit with screens. Faces stared back at her from the monitors. James curled on the sidewalk, Rosa at the diner, Malik in the stairwell sketching. Even Rex appeared, sleeping in a pool of dim light. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't random. Someone had mapped their lives deliberately, chosen them for reasons Anna couldn't yet see. The network wasn't just about voyeurism, it was about control. These feeds weren't entertainment. They were surveillance, data collected and sold, used to reinforce the same prejudices that kept people like James, Malik, and Rosa trapped. She copied what files she could onto a drive, her heart pounding. She heard footsteps, then a shuffle across broken glass. She spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. No one, only shadows. But she felt it. She wasn't alone. She killed the light and slipped out, every nerve screaming. Back at her apartment, she poured the data onto her laptop, scrolling through the evidence. Chat logs buzzed with slurs. That's placed on interrogations, private notes about profiles of weakness. One file listed Malik's name, describing him as likely offender within 5 years. Another listed Rosa as unstable single mother, at risk of eviction watch for desperation crimes. James was noted simply as vagrant veteran, mentally unstable, harmless, but useful for case studies. Anna covered her mouth, bile rising. They weren't just recording. They were predicting, categorizing, condemning lives before they even unfolded. The system had already judged them guilty of futures they hadn't lived yet. She thought of Malik's essay about his mother. She thought of Rosa folding Marisol's drawings into her purse. She thought of Jane's whispering names into the night while Rex kept watch. These people weren't data points. They were human. And if the city had forgotten that, then maybe she hadn't. The next week, she began to seek them out, not as an investigator, but as a witness. She talked to James again, listening as he unraveled fragments of his war stories. He told her about the time Rex had pulled him away from a roadside bomb, about the nights they both froze in silence waiting for dawn. He spoke like a man clinging to the memory of being needed. Anna let him talk, her notebook closed, her pen untouched. She found Malik outside the school, his ball tucked under one arm. He looked at her suspiciously at first, wary of the badge even though she wasn't wearing it. But when she asked him about his drawings, his face lit up. He showed her pages filled with heroes that looked like him, taller, stronger, free. She told him they were real. He didn't believe her, not yet, but she could see the spark it left in his eyes. She visited Rosa at the diner, ordering coffee just to sit and talk. Rosa laughed when Anna asked about Marisol's drawings. She thinks every problem has a picture for a solution, Rosa said. Houses, gardens, dogs, even sunshine. As if she could draw her way into a better life. The laugh broke halfway through, and Anna reached across the table, resting her hand over Rosa's for just a moment. These encounters weren't part of the job, not really. But they were the reason she couldn't walk away. The network wasn't only dangerous because of what it exposed. It was dangerous because it taught people to see others not as lives, but as stories already written. It fed the lie that James was broken, that Malik was doomed, that Rosa was disposable. Anna refused to believe it. But the deeper she dug, the clearer it became that the network wasn't just a rogue operation. It was tied to the precinct, to city hall, to the very structures meant to protect. Files showed contracts, payments, officials signing off with clean signatures while dirty money changed hands. Justice had become theater, and the audience was paying to keep the curtain drawn. One evening, exhausted, Anna sat in her apartment with the blinds shut tight. She opened her laptop to a feed she hadn't seen before. It was her, walking into the precinct, standing in the interrogation room, sitting at her desk. She slammed the lid shut, her breath sharp. They were watching her too. She was part of the story now. The fear was real, but so was the fire in her chest. She thought again of James and Rex in the rain, of Malik's quiet defiance, of Rosa's brittle laugh. The network had already judged them, written their futures in red ink. But maybe, just maybe, she could rewrite the ending. The city had a way of squeezing people until nothing was left but shadows. James felt it every time a patrol car slowed near his corner. The officers never stopped to ask if he was all right. They nudged him along with words sharp as sticks. "Move it, old man. Can't sleep here. Find a shelter." He wanted to shout back that he had fought for this country, that the medals they gave him were worth less than the blanket he clutched at night. But the words dried in his throat, swallowed by shame. Rex pressed against his leg as if to remind him he was still more than what they saw. One night, after being chased from a doorway by a baton tapping against brick, James wandered into an alley and collapsed on the wet ground. Rex barked, nudged his face, whined. James lay there thinking maybe it would be easier not to get up, but the dog wouldn't let him. Rex licked his cheek, pawed at his chest, and when James finally opened his eyes again, he saw loyalty shining back at him. In that moment, James realized the only reason he still lived was because someone still believed he was worth saving, even if that someone was a dog. Malik had his own breaking point. The teacher announced the school play, and roles were handed out. Malik wanted to audition, but when he stepped forward, the laughter started again. One boy whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "He can play the thief." The room erupted. The teacher didn't stop them. Malik froze, his face burning, his fists clenched. He walked out before they could see his tears. On the way home, he hurled his ball against the wall again and again until his hands throbbed. He wanted to smash it, to destroy the thing that carried all his dreams, but something inside him refused. He picked it up, hugged it close, and whispered to himself, "I'll show them. One day I'll show them." Rosa's night was darker still. Rent was due, and the landlord banged on her door with threats about eviction. Marisol clung to her skirt, eyes wide with fear. Rosa begged for more time, her voice cracking, but the man only shrugged. "Business is business," he said, leaving her trembling in the doorway. She sank to the floor once he left, holding her daughter tight. Marisol whispered, "Don't cry, Mama. We can draw a new house." Rosa laughed through her tears, broken by the innocence of it. She wanted to believe, but the walls around them were crumbling. Anna carried all of this inside her like stones. Each day she uncovered more files, more feeds, each one an indictment of a system designed not to protect but to prey. She saw how people in power manipulated fear, how they labeled James as unstable, Malik as a future criminal, Rosa as a liability. She felt her own anger sharpen with each discovery. Yet beneath the anger was sorrow because she knew these labels could stick, could become reality if no one fought against them. The precinct grew colder toward her. Colleagues avoided her gaze, whispers followed her down the hall. She suspected. They knew she was digging where she shouldn't. Her superiors praised her efficiency while quietly warning her not to overcomplicate small cases. She understood the message, stop looking. But she couldn't, not after what she had seen. One evening, while reviewing the data, she noticed something odd. In one of the feeds, Rex was barking at the camera, staring straight into the lens as if he knew it was there. The image jolted her. It felt like a message, like the dog was reminding her not to look away. She leaned closer to the screen and whispered, "I see you." The more she saw, the more the city revealed its fractures. A protest broke out near City Hall, homeless advocates demanding shelter, mothers demanding better schools, veterans demanding health care. Police lined up in riot gear, batons ready. Anna stood at the edge, her badge hidden in her pocket. She watched James among the crowd, Rex at his side, barking with a voice that cut through the chants. Malik was there too, holding a sign scrawled. In marker, "We are human." Rosa clutched Marisol's hand, her face pale but determined. The clash came fast. Smoke, shouts, the crack of batons against shields. Anna pushed forward, trying to reach them. She saw James stumble, saw Rosa pulled back by Marisol's small hands, saw Malik nearly swallowed by the crush of bodies. In the chaos, Rex leapt forward, placing himself between James and a swinging baton. The blow landed, and the dog yelped, collapsing onto the pavement. James dropped to his knees, cradling him. Time slowed for Anna. She forced her way through, pulled James and Rex back, grabbed Malik's arm, shielded Rosa and Marisol. Her lungs burned from tear gas, but she held her ground until the crowd dispersed. When it was over, the square lay littered with signs and broken glass. Rex whimpered, but he lived. James's hands shook as he stroked the dog's fur. Malik's face was streaked with tears and rage. Rosa held Marisol tight, whispering promises she didn't know how to keep. Anna looked at them. These lives already condemned by a system that had written their stories in advance, and felt a surge of defiance. Maybe the network believed it could predict the future, reduce people to data points. But in that moment, she saw something stronger, resilience. The kind that refused to be erased. That night, she returned home, bruised and exhausted. She opened her laptop and stared at the feeds. Her own face stared back from one of the screens caught in the chaos, standing with the very people she was supposed to forget. The watchers had noticed. They knew she was no longer just an observer. Her chest tightened, fear pressing hard. But she didn't close the laptop. She leaned closer, eyes steady, and whispered, "You're watching me? Good. Then watch what comes next." The square smelled of smoke and fear long after the crowd had gone. Broken glass glittered on the pavement like spilled stars, and the air was heavy with the sting of tear gas that refused to fade. Anna stood in the ruins of the protest, her body aching, her lungs raw, but her mind sharper than it had ever been. She watched James cradle Rex, rocking the dog in his arms as if he were a child. Malik sat against the curb, eyes wide and hollow, clutching his sign with trembling hands. Rosa held Marisol, who pressed her face into her mother's neck, whispering questions Rosa could not answer. It was no longer possible to pretend this was just about a hacked camera feed. This was bigger, crueler. The network wasn't just watching. It was provoking, feeding chaos back into the streets to prove its predictions right. By labeling people as unstable, criminal, desperate, it forced them into the very roles it had written. It was prophecy disguised as data, self-fulfilling and merciless. Anna knew she couldn't keep this to herself any longer. The city had to see what she had seen. But she also knew that if she exposed the truth recklessly, the people she cared about, James, Malik, Rosa, would be crushed first. The system didn't protect the weak, it devoured them. She would have to be careful. She spent nights buried in files, screens glowing against the dark. Every keystroke felt like trespassing. In a forbidden cathedral, a place where secrets were stored like sacred artifacts. She found contracts linking the feeds to private investors, men who sat in tall glass towers and called themselves philanthropists while betting on the ruin of the poor. She found memos signed by officials in City Hall authorizing predictive policing initiatives that were nothing more than legalized profiling. She found the names of officers in her own precinct, men she had nodded to in the hallway, who had signed away the dignity of strangers for a paycheck. Each discovery burned hotter than the last. She printed pages, pinned them to her wall, strings, connecting names to places, faces to profits. The web grew until it covered the plaster like a spreading infection. One night, James knocked on her door. His clothes were damp from rain, Rex limping at his side. Anna hesitated before letting him in, worried he might see too much, but his eyes told her he already carried more weight than any wall of evidence could. He sat heavily on her couch, Rex curling up at his feet. "You're digging into something." "Ugly," James rasped, his voice low. Anna poured him water, watching his hands tremble as he held the glass. "I don't have a choice." "You always got a choice," he said. He took a sip, then set the glass down. "But if you're gonna keep going, you'd better be ready to lose everything. People like me," he gestured vaguely at himself, at Rex, at the world beyond the window, "we've already lost. They can't take more from me. But you, they'll come for you." Anna met his gaze. "They already are." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by Rex's steady breathing. James leaned back, his eyes closing, and whispered, "Then don't stop. If you stop, all of this stays the same." Meanwhile, Malik was unraveling in his own way. The night after the protest, he sat in his room, the essay about his mother crumpled in one hand, his sketchbook open in front of him. He drew until his pencil broke. Heroes with fists raised, heroes with shields, heroes with scars that looked like his. He wanted to believe in them, but the echo of laughter from his classmates haunted him. He felt the label tightening around his neck. Future criminal. It was easier to sink into the role they'd written for him than to keep fighting it. The next day, he stole a candy bar from a corner store. The clerk barely looked at him before calling the police. Anna arrived on scene, heartbreaking as she saw Malik in the back of a squad car, his eyes wide with fear and shame. She pulled rank, demanded his release, and walked him home. He didn't speak the entire way. When they reached his building, he whispered, "I just wanted to know if they were right." Anna crouched down, gripping his shoulders. "Listen to me. They are not right. They want you to believe it so you'll stop fighting. Don't give them that power." Malik stared at her, tears brimming. "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Keep drawing," she said firmly. "Keep playing, keep living. That's how you win." Rosa's battle came in the form of a notice slipped under her door, "Final eviction warning." She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the paper as Marisol colored beside her. She wanted to scream, to break something, but instead she folded the notice neatly and tucked it under the stack of bills she couldn't pay. When Anna visited that evening, Rosa tried to smile, tried to joke about coffee at the diner, but her eyes gave her away. "They're pushing me out," Rosa admitted. "And once I'm out, I don't know where we go. Shelters are full." "My family," she shook her head. "They turned their backs a long time ago." Anna felt the weight of helplessness pressing down. She couldn't promise Rosa a home, but she could promise her this: "I won't let them erase you. Not you, not Marisol." The truth was, Anna didn't know how to keep that promise. Each day she felt the walls closing in, the network tightening its grip. Files began to vanish from her computer, as if someone was deleting evidence in real time. Anonymous messages appeared in her inbox. "Stop digging. You don't know who you're up against." Her tires were slashed outside her apartment. Once, late at night, she heard footsteps behind her on an empty street. But when she turned, no one was there. The fear was constant, but so was the fire. She couldn't back down. Not when she had seen the way James clung to Rex, the way Malik clung to his drawings, the way Rosa clung to her daughter's small hand. These people deserved more than survival. They deserved to live without being watched, judged, condemned before they could even breathe. The breaking point came when Anna's wall of evidence was stolen. She came home to find her apartment door ajar, papers ripped down, strings cut, files missing. The only thing left was a single photograph pinned to the wall, her standing in the square with James, Malik, and Rosa, written across it in red ink, "You belong to us now." She sank to the floor, fury and fear twisting in her chest. They wanted her to know she was trapped, that she was part of the story whether she liked it or not. But they had made one mistake. They thought fear would silence her. Instead, it ignited her. Anna gathered James, Malik, Rosa, and a handful of others at a safe house, a church basement offered by an old friend. She laid out what she had found, the contracts, the feeds, the predictions. They listened in stunned silence, the weight of their lives reduced to data points sinking in. Malik was the first to speak. "So they already decided who I am," he said, voice trembling. "Before I even get a chance?" "Yes," Anna said, "but you don't have to let them be right." Rosa wiped at her eyes. "How do we fight something this big?" James's voice was steady, though his hands shook. "Same way you fight any war. You hold the line. You make them see you won't disappear." Rex barked once, sharp and loud, as if to punctuate the thought. Everyone looked at the dog, and for a moment, the room was lighter. He was old, scarred, limping but unbroken. A living reminder that loyalty and resilience could survive even the harshest battles. Anna took a breath. "We fight by exposing them. Not just to the courts, they're bought. Not just to the press, they're owned. We fight by showing people the truth, unfiltered, undeniable. We turn their own feeds against them." It was dangerous, reckless, but it was the only way. The plan formed slowly, like fire catching dry wood. They would gather more evidence, leak it where the network couldn't contain it, force the city to look. Every risk was real, every consequence looming. But for the first time, Anna saw not just fear in their eyes, but resolve. James straightened in his chair, Rex's head on his knee. Malik flipped through his sketches, choosing one of a hero holding a sign. Rosa squeezed Marisol's hand, whispering, "We're not invisible anymore." Anna looked around the room and felt the weight of what lay ahead. The network had written their futures in red ink, but she believed, with every fiber of her being, that together they could write something different. And when the city finally saw the truth raw, undeniable, it would have to choose. Keep hiding behind mirrors, or face the people it had tried to erase. The city didn't sleep the way it used to. At least that's how it felt to Anna once the plan began to take shape. Every shadow seemed thicker, every sound louder, as if the whole machine of the city had turned its gaze on her. The air felt electric, humming with the threat of discovery. She walked the streets with her collar turned up, scanning reflections in windows for tales. Once, she caught sight of a man watching her from across the subway platform. When she blinked, he was gone, leaving only the echo of boots on concrete. She tried to keep working at the precinct, keeping her face calm, her questions routine. But she could feel the change. The way her colleagues' conversations hushed when she entered the room, the sideways glances, the subtle tightening of shoulders. They knew something. Or maybe they just sensed her pulling away from them, her trust eroding. Either way, the line between ally and enemy was no longer clear. At night, in the basement of the church, the group gathered around a battered table. James hunched forward, his hands knotted, Rex at his feet. Malik scribbled furiously in his notebook, the scratch of pencil filling silences. Rosa poured coffee into mismatched mugs, her smile thin, her eyes tired. Marisol colored beside her, humming quietly, her innocence a fragile shield. Anna spread papers and screenshots across the table, the threads of the conspiracy stretching like veins. "They want us to believe we're powerless," she said. "That we're just profiles, data points. But the truth is, they're terrified of being seen. If we can turn their mirror outward, show the city what they've built, it can't be ignored." James exhaled, shaking his head. "You're asking for a war. Wars don't end clean." "I know," Anna said softly. "But what's the alternative? We stay quiet, and they keep feeding on us. They keep deciding who lives and who's discarded. If we fight, we might lose. But if we don't fight, we've already lost." Malik looked up, eyes blazing. "Then let's fight." His voice cracked, but the resolve behind it was real. He slammed his sketchbook shut, his small fist trembling on the cover. Rosa reached for his hand, squeezing it. You're still a child. You shouldn't have to fight battles like this. Malik pulled away, his jaw set. Neither should you. The words cut through the room, silencing everyone. Rosa blinked, then lowered her gaze, ashamed of the truth in them. That night, Anna walked James home, or what passed for home, a corner near the river where cardboard shelters leaned against the wall. The wind off the water cut sharp, carrying the stench of diesel and decay. Rex limped beside them, his breath puffing white in the cold. You think we can really win? James asked, his voice barely above the rush of water. I think we can't. Afford not to try, Anna answered. He chuckled bitterly. That sounds like something I used to say before a mission. We believed it too. Belief doesn't always stop bullets. Anna stopped, looking at him. No, but it's the only thing. That makes them worth facing. James nodded, staring out at the black river. For the first time in years, he let himself imagine a future where Rex wasn't the only witness to his life. Meanwhile, Rosa faced her own impossible choice. The eviction notice weighed heavy in her pocket, the landlord's threats ringing in her ears. One night, after Marisol had fallen asleep, Rosa sat alone at the table, staring at a bottle of pills left over from a hospital visit. Her hands shook as she held it, thinking about how easy it would be to silence the gnawing hunger, the endless fear. But then Marisol stirred in her sleep, whispering, "Mama," and Rosa dropped the bottle as if it burned. She crawled into bed beside her daughter, clutching her close, tears soaking the pillow. Survival wasn't just about her anymore. Anna saw the cracks deepening in all of them. James's cough was worse, his steps slower. Malik's anger boiled hotter, threatening to consume him. Rosa's despair sat like a shadow behind her eyes. They were fragile, each of them one breath away from breaking. And yet, when they came together, there was something unshakable. A thread of resilience that bound them tighter than fear. The network must have sensed it too, because the attacks escalated. Malik was stopped and frisked on his way home, officers accusing of carrying drugs he didn't have. Rosa was denied work at the diner after someone whispered to the manager that she was trouble. James was roughed up by strangers who told him to keep quiet if he knew what was good for him. Anna herself was called into her captain's office. He smiled too easily, his words polished but sharp. "We've noticed your extracurricular interests," he said. "Be careful, Torres. Curiosity is a dangerous habit in this line of work." When she left his office, her stomach churned. It was confirmation. The rot went all the way to the top. The breaking point came one evening when Malik didn't show up to the basement meeting. Hours passed, panic rising, until finally he stumbled in, his face bruised, his shirt torn. He had been grabbed by men in an unmarked van, questioned, threatened. "They said they'll come for you next," he whispered, eyes darting to Anna. Anna clenched her fists. The line had been crossed. They weren't just watching anymore, they were striking. James slammed his hand on the table. "Enough, no more waiting. We take this to the streets. We show everyone now." Rosa shook her head. "If we rush, we'll lose everything. They'll bury us before the truth gets out." The room fractured, voices rising. James demanding action. Rosa pleading for caution. Malik insisting he was ready to fight. Anna trying to hold them together. Rex barked sharply, the sound cutting through the chaos, pulling them back to silence. Anna took a deep breath. "We can't turn on each other. That's what they want. We need a plan that's loud enough to be heard, but smart enough to survive." It was Rosa who spoke next, surprising everyone. "Then let's use what they fear most. If they built their power on watching us, we'll make them the ones on display. We'll use their own mirror against them." The idea settled over the room like a spark catching dry wood. They would hijack the network, flood the feeds not with the images the investors wanted, but with the truth, contracts, files, names, faces. They would expose the watchers to the very city they exploited. It wouldn't be easy. It might not even work. But it was a chance. For days they prepared in secret. Malik sketched posters to plaster across walls, bold letters declaring "We see you." Rosa gathered neighbors, whispering plans over laundry lines. James reached out to other veterans on the street, men broken, but not defeated. Anna coded and hacked, fingers flying, pulling together the pieces of a broadcast that could pierce the city's indifference. On the night of the operation, they gathered once more in the basement. The air was thick with fear and resolve. James clasped Anna's shoulder, his grip strong despite his trembling hand. Malik held his sketchbook like a shield. Rosa kissed Marisol's forehead, sending her upstairs with a neighbor. Rex barked once, as if to say he understood. Anna looked at them, at this unlikely family forged from pain and defiance, and said, "Whatever happens tonight, we've already won, because we refuse to be invisible." Then they began. The basement smelled of old wood and damp stone, but that night it felt like something more, like the beginning of a covenant. They had sat around the table so many nights before, but this time was different. The plan was alive now, fragile but real, and it required more than anger to hold it together. It required trust. Anna had never been good at sharing herself. She was a woman who built walls, brick upon brick, and wore her silence like armor. But as she looked at the faces around her, the soldier with trembling hands, the boy clutching his sketchbook, the mother staring at the floor as if it were quicksand, she realized those walls were useless here. They needed her whole, not half. And she needed them, too. James broke the silence first. His voice was gravel, but the words came with surprising softness. "You know," he said, staring at his hands, "I wasn't supposed to come back. That bomb, it should have been me. Rex pulled me away. Everyone else didn't make it." He stopped, his throat tightening. Rex nudged his leg, as if to steady him. James's eyes glistened, and he let the silence swallow the rest. Rosa reached across the table and laid her hand over his. He flinched. At first no one touched him anymore, but then he let her, his shoulders sagging under the weight of years. "You're still here," she whispered. "That means something. Maybe more than you know." Malik shifted in his chair, fidgeting. He had never seen an adult man cry. It unnerved him, but it also cracked something open inside him. He wanted to tell James that heroes didn't always wear uniforms, that sometimes they looked like tired men holding on for dear life. But instead he opened his sketchbook and slid it across the table. On the page was a drawing of a man in worn boots, a dog at his side, standing taller than the skyscrapers behind him. James stared at it for a long moment, his lips trembling. "That's me?" he asked. Malik nodded, shy. "That's how I see you." James closed the book gently, as if it were fragile. "No one's looked at me like that in years," he said, his voice cracking. Anna felt the air shift in the room, heavy with the unspoken. She leaned forward. "This is what they'll never understand. They can turn us into profiles, predictions, categories. But they can't see this. They can't measure loyalty, or courage, or love." Rosa's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "Love," she repeated softly, as if the word itself was foreign on her tongue. "That's all it is, isn't it? Everything they strip away from us. That's the thing that keeps us alive." Later that night, after the meeting broke, Anna walked Rosa and Marisol home. The streets were quiet, washed clean by rain. Marisol skipped ahead, splashing in puddles, her laughter carrying against the dark. Rosa watched her with a tenderness that cut through her exhaustion. "You know," Rosa said quietly, "when I was younger, I thought love was supposed to save you. Some man sweeping in, fixing everything. But it doesn't work like that. The only thing saving me is her." She nodded toward Marisol. "And now maybe us. What we're doing." Anna slipped her hands into her coat pockets. "I used to think justice was clean. That if you worked hard enough, followed the rules, you could carve it out. but it's messy. Maybe it's the same with love. It's not perfect. It's just holding on, even when the world tells you to let go. Rosa smiled, a real one this time, weary but alive. In the days that followed, the group spent hours together, planning, preparing. But between the strategies and the risks, something else began to grow. They learned each other's rhythms. The way Malik hummed under his breath when he drew. The way James always cut his food in half and saved a piece for Rex. The way Rosa tucked stray strands of hair behind her ear when she was nervous. Anna began to notice these details as if they were precious artifacts. They were. In a world determined to erase them, every small habit became an act of defiance. One afternoon, Malik insisted on teaching James to dribble a basketball. James laughed at the absurdity, but he tried, his hands too stiff, the ball bouncing awkwardly. Malik teased him until James shot him a mock glare, and soon they were both laughing deep, belly laughter that startled even Rex. Anna and Rosa watched from the church steps, smiling like sisters who had never had the chance to be. Look at them, Rosa said softly. Like the world isn't burning. Maybe that's the point, Anna replied. Finding pieces of joy anyway. That night, after everyone left, Anna lingered alone in the basement. She stared at the papers pinned to the wall, the evidence of corruption sprawling like a map of infection. Her chest tightened. She wanted to be strong for all of them, but she was afraid. Afraid of failing, of losing them, of being swallowed by the very thing she fought. She felt a weight against her leg. Looking down, she saw Rex had padded over, his cloudy eyes watching her. He pressed his muzzle to her knee, steady, grounding. She sank to the floor, burying her face in his fur, letting herself cry. No speeches, no resolve, just grief, just exhaustion. Rex stayed still, bearing it with the patience of someone who had carried burdens before. When James returned to fetch him, he saw the wetness on Anna's cheeks but said nothing. He just nodded, as if to say he understood. For the first time, Anna let herself be grateful for his silence. The walls between them were crumbling. Not in collapse, but in surrender. They were beginning to trust not because they had no choice, but because there was no other way forward. The turning point came when Rosa invited everyone to her apartment for dinner. It was cramped, the wallpaper peeling, the table too small. But she cooked with what she had: beans, rice, bread gone slightly stale. They crowded together, plates balanced on laps, laughter filling the space. Marisol insisted on saying grace, thanking God for heroes and dogs and mamas who never give up. The words were simple, but they carved themselves into Anna's heart. After dinner, Malik showed Marisol how to spin the basketball on her finger. James told stories of Rex's younger days, embellishing until even Rosa laughed. Anna sat back, watching them, realizing that somewhere along the line, this had become more than strategy. It was family, imperfect and fragile, but real. That night as she walked home, Anna felt something she hadn't in years: hope. Not the naive hope of clean justice, but the messy, stubborn kind born of connection. The kind that could survive. Even in the cracks of a broken city, the night of the broadcast began like any other: quiet, almost too quiet. The city glimmered with its usual contradictions. Neon lights buzzing above streets, littered with the forgotten. Anna sat in the church basement, her laptop open, the feeds humming. The plan was simple in its impossibility: hijack the network and expose it from within. Flood its watchers with the very truth they had tried to bury. James sat polishing Rex's collar, though the leather was cracked and worn. His hands shook, but his focus was absolute, as if preparing a soldier for battle. Malik sprawled across the table, sketching slogans in thick, dark strokes. We see you, we are human, you cannot erase us. Rosa braided Marisol's hair, humming softly, though her eyes darted off into the door, restless with nerves. Anna closed the laptop and looked at them. Tonight they'll see us. Not the versions they wrote in their files, not the profiles they sold, us, the people they can't erase. James gave a rough laugh. Then let's hope we're worth watching. But before they could begin, the lights flickered. A hum rose through the basement, low at first, then louder, until the walls seemed to vibrate. The screens snapped on. Unbidden, showing not their chosen broadcast but a single live feed, the church itself, its basement from another angle. They were already being watched. Anna's stomach dropped. She slammed her laptop shut, but the image remained, projected across the wall. A voice filled the room, smooth, practiced, male. "We applaud your initiative," it said. "Truly you've given us a show. But every story has a narrator, and you're not the one holding the pen." Malik shoved his chair back, panic flashing in his eyes. They know. They've known the whole time. James rose, fury shaking through him. "Show yourself, you coward," the voice chuckled. "We already have. You just refuse to see." The feed shifted, splitting into 4 screens. On one, Anna saw her own desk at the precinct. On another, Rosa's apartment door, marked with the eviction notice. On the third, Malik's school stairwell, his sketches scattered across the floor. On the last, James curled under a bridge, Rex pressed close. The images looped, over and over, as if mocking them with the mundanity of their pain. Anna's hands clenched. "You think these are stories you own," she spat. "But these are lives, and lives don't belong to you." The voice grew colder. "Lives are currency, and yours just became very expensive." The screens went black. Silence crashed into the room. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Rosa whispered, "We can't win. They're everywhere." Malik slammed his fists on the table. "So what? We give up? Just let them decide who we are?" James pulled Rex closer, his jaw tight. "I've seen worse odds. We hold the line." Anna forced herself to breathe. The step they had feared had already been taken. The network wasn't just watching, it was speaking. A direct confrontation. That meant weakness in some form. Why else reveal themselves? She leaned forward, determination hardening. "They want us scared. That means we matter. That means we're close. We keep going." But fear spread like smoke. Rosa clutched Marisol tighter, her eyes darting to the door. Malik paced like a caged animal. James stared at the wall, silent. That night, as the others slept on cots and blankets, Anna lay awake, listening to the creak of the church above. She thought of the voice, its calm certainty, its claim of ownership. It wasn't just a man or a company. It was a machine, a system that thrived on invisibility. And now, for the first time, it had spoken directly to her. The next day, Anna returned to the precinct. She walked the halls with measured steps, eyes scanning every corner. Her captain called her into his office again. This time the smile was gone. "You're treading dangerous ground," he said. "Drop it." "That's an order." Anna stared at him, reading the exhaustion in his eyes, the flicker of fear he couldn't hide. "You're part of it," she said. He didn't deny it. "We all are. That's how the city works. Do yourself a favor and play along. It's easier." She left without answering, her heart pounding. Confirmation. The network wasn't just tied to power, it was power. That evening, she told the others. James nodded grimly. Rosa cried quietly. Malik swore under his breath. "They control everything," Anna said. "Police, housing, schools. They don't just watch, they decide. And the only way to break it is to make everyone see it at once." Malik slammed his sketchbook down. "Then let's burn it down. Right now." James put a hand on his shoulder. "Careful, kid. Fire burns more than what you aim at." But even James's caution was fraying. He coughed blood into his sleeve that night, hiding it, but Anna saw. She didn't say anything, not yet. He had already given too much. Days blurred together. The network pushed harder. Malik was suspended from school for fighting, though he swore he hadn't thrown a punch. Rosa's landlord served the final eviction notice, police at her door to enforce it. James was arrested for loitering and beaten in custody, released only when Anna intervened. Each wound was designed to break them, and yet each wound bound them tighter. In their shared pain, they found strength. Malik stayed at Rosa's apartment to help pack. James taught Marisol how to whistle through her teeth. Rosa sat beside James. At night, pressing warm claws to his chest. Anna watched it all, realizing that the network had underestimated one thing: love. Not romantic, not neat, but raw, stubborn love that refused to be erased. The night of the second attempt came. They had one shot left, one chance to flood the feeds with truth. Anna worked for hours, fingers numb, eyes burning. Malik painted banners in thick strokes. Rosa prepared food as if to steady them. James cleaned Rex's wounds, whispering old army prayers. They launched the broadcast at midnight. Screens across the city flickered, street billboards, subway ads, even phones. Files spilled into the open. Contracts, memos, chat logs, names. The city saw it all, the predictions, the bets, the exploitation. But then the feeds shifted. The network fought back. Suddenly, instead of files, images filled the screens. Malik stealing the candy bar, Rosa begging her landlord, James shaking in an alley, Anna crying into Rex's fur. The most vulnerable moments turned against them. The city gasped. Were they victims, or were they what the network claimed? Anna's heart dropped. This was the step she hadn't predicted. They weren't just exposing the system was exposing them. James stood, his chest heaving. Then we tell the whole damn story, he growled. No more hiding. If they want to show our worst, we'll show them our best too. He grabbed Malik's sketches, Rosa's drawings from Marisol, Anna's files. Together, they streamed it all: pain and joy, despair and defiance. The city saw Malik's heroes, Rosa's family, James's loyalty, Rex's faith. They saw Anna's determination, her face unguarded, human. For a moment, silence stretched across the city. Then voices rose online, in the streets, in the alleys. People recognized themselves in the images. Not data, not profiles. People. The network had meant to destroy them. Instead, it had revealed the truth more deeply than Anna ever could. The cost was coming, she could feel it. Somewhere in the city, powerful men were already planning their response. And for the first time, Anna wasn't afraid. She looked at James, Malik, Rosa, and Rex. They were bruised, battered, vulnerable. But they were unbroken. The morning after the broadcast, the city felt different. People on the subway whispered, eyes fixed on their phones, replaying the images. Over and over. Screens in shop windows looped fragments of the hacked feed. James clutching Rex, Rosa begging at her door, Malik sketching his heroes, Anna staring down the camera with defiance. For the first time, the city wasn't looking away. It was looking straight at them, but power doesn't crumble overnight. Before noon, officials called it a hoax. News anchors framed it as an isolated cyberattack. Commentators debated whether the stories were staged, whether the faces were actors. Some viewers scoffed, of course the homeless man's crazy. Of course the boy's trouble. Of course the mother's unstable. The same prejudices recycled as armor. Yet beneath the denial, something stirred. Protests spread like brushfire. People carried signs with Malik's slogans. We see you, we are human. Veterans marched with James's name scrawled on cardboard. Mothers brought their children to City Hall, chanting for Rosa. Strangers taped drawings of Rex on walls, the old dog suddenly a symbol for loyalty the system couldn't corrupt. Anna watched from the church steps. The sound of chanting rolling like thunder through the streets. Her chest swelled with pride and fear. They had lit a fuse, and now the whole city was burning. But with fire came smoke. That evening, unmarked vans prowled the streets. Protesters were dragged away, their screams swallowed by sirens. Anonymous threats filled Anna's phone. "We know where you sleep. We know where she goes to school. We know the boy's routine." Malik flinched every time a car slowed near him. Rosa kept Marisol inside, curtains drawn. James carried Rex's leash in one hand and a rusted pipe in the other, coughing blood but refusing to rest. The weight pressed heavier each day. The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next strike. And it came fast, one night as they met in the basement. The door burst open. Men in black uniforms stormed in, faces hidden. Shouts, the crack of batons, the crash of glass. Anna lunged for Malik, pulling him behind her. James swung the pipe, his body moving with the memory of battle. Rex snarled, teeth flashing, leaping at one of the intruders. Rosa shielded Marisol with her own body. Chaos swallowed them. Anna's head slammed against the wall. Stars burst in her vision. She fought to stay conscious, clawing for Malik's hand. But then, just as suddenly as they came, the men retreated. They left the basement wrecked, papers torn, blood on the floor. A warning. Not yet the kill. When the dust settled, Rex whimpered, blood staining his fur. James cradled him, his face twisted with anguish. "He'll make it," James rasped, as if trying to convince himself. Anna pressed cloth to the wound, her own hands shaking. "Dademayar, ISO hell," sobbed into Rosa's chest. Malik stood frozen, fists clenched, his eyes burning with a rage too big for his small frame. "We can't hide anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "We have to fight back." James coughed hard, blood speckling his lips. "We already are," he said. "Every breath we take, every time we refuse to disappear, that's the fight." Anna touched his arm. "But they won't stop until we show them we won't either. Until we face them head on." The next days blurred into survival. They patched the basement as best they could. They shared food scraped from donations, took turns keeping watch. Trust deepened in the cracks. Anna held Marisol when nightmares woke her screaming. Rosa pressed warm towels to James's chest when the coughing left him doubled over. Malik slipped sketches under Anna's door drawings of her standing tall, unbroken. Even Rex, weak but stubborn, dragged himself to the door each night, guarding them as if he understood. The city too was shifting. More feeds leaked, perhaps other insiders emboldened by Anna's act. Names of officials spread online. Crowds gathered at City Hall, chanting louder longer. The system fought back with propaganda, branding them criminals, liars, anarchists. But the chants drowned it out. "We are human. We see you." Anna knew the endgame was coming. The network couldn't allow them to keep breathing, not after they had punctured its mask. She felt it in the silence between sirens, in the way shadows lingered too long. It was only a matter of time before the final strike, and it came, not as she expected. Not soldiers at the door, not vans in the night, but a letter. Delivered to the church, sealed with the city's crest. An invitation. A public forum to address the broadcast, to prove their accusations, or be discredited forever. James spat on the floor when Anna read it aloud. "A trap, of course," Anna said, "but it's also a stage. They want to humiliate us in the light. Maybe we make that light our weapon." Rosa's hands shook. "What if they take Marisol? They'll take us anyway if we stay silent." Anna said that the decision tore at them. Go, and risk being destroyed publicly, refuse, and vanish quietly. Either way, the network tightened its grip. But Anna saw something in Malik's eyes fire, not fear. "Let's go," he said. "Let them see us for real." The day of the forum, the hall was packed. Cameras flashed, officials sat stiff at long tables, their faces masks of control. Anna, James, Rosa, Malik, and Rex stood together before the crowd. They looked nothing like warriors. They looked human, tired, bruised, ordinary. And that was their strength. The official spoke first, dismissing the broadcast as fabrications. Screens behind them flashed the same humiliating clips. Rosa weeping, Malik stealing, James trembling, Anna crying. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Then Anna stepped forward. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. Yes, that's us, that's real. But that's not all we are. She motioned to Malik, who held up his sketches, pages filled with heroes who looked like him. This is Malik. They call him a criminal. I call him an artist, a dreamer. He is not what they say. She pointed to Rosa, who clutched Marisol's hand. This is Rosa. They call her unstable. I call her a mother. She is the reason her daughter smiles when the world wants her to cry. She nodded at James, who leaned on his cane, Rex at his side. This is James. They call him broken. I call him a soldier, a survivor. He carried loyalty through fire and still stands today. Her eyes burned into the cameras. And me? They call me compromised. I call myself human. Just like everyone of you. That's the truth they fear, that we are human. That we see them, and we will not disappear. The hall erupted, some jeers, some cheers, chaos. But outside, the protests swelled louder than ever. The chant rolled like thunder through the city. We are human. We see you. For the first time, Anna saw fear on the officials' faces. The mirror had cracked. The forum did not end with applause or resolution. It ended in chaos. Shouts echoed in the chamber, some voices crying for truth, others demanding order. Officials rose from their seats, faces tight, barking into phones as if control could be summoned with commands. Outside, the chants shook the streets, spilling into every alley and corner. The city was awake now, restless, angry, alive. Anna stood with her people, James leaning on his cane, Rex at his feet, Rosa clutching Marisol's hand, Malik holding his sketches like scripture. They looked small against the towering walls and flashing cameras. But small things could move mountains. She felt it in the floor beneath her boots, trembling with the roar outside. When they left the building, the crowd surged toward them. Strangers reached out, touching James's arm, Rosa's shoulder, Malik's drawings. Phones lit the night, capturing every second. The officials had tried to humiliate them, but instead they had made them symbols. The retaliation was swift. By dawn, police raided the church, seizing the basement, scattering their few belongings. Warrants were issued. Names smeared on headlines. Anna was suspended from the force, branded a traitor. James was called a fraud. Rosa was painted as negligent. Malik was labeled a delinquent. The machine struck back with every tool it had. But the city was no longer silent. Protesters flooded the streets, carrying signs with Malik's slogans. Veterans marched beside James, holding Rex's image high. Mothers stood with Rosa, their children on their shoulders. Students taped Malik's sketches on classroom walls. Even some officers quietly turned away, refusing to enforce the crackdowns.